It is the silhouette of a city. You could draw it with just 3 lines, and the entire world would instantly recognize it. For nearly 40 years, the Austin FX4 wasn't just a car, it was the furniture of London. It survived the Beatles, the Cold War, and the complete collapse of the British car industry. But time and the government finally caught up with it. Why did this unkillable icon suddenly disappear from our streets? This is the story of the day London lost its soul. To understand this car, you first have to understand the city it was built for. Post-war London was a labyrinth of narrow medieval streets, and the authorities needed a vehicle that could navigate them without causing gridlock. Enter the Public Carriage Office, the strict guardians of the London taxi trade. They didn't just want a car, they wanted a machine built to a specific, almost impossible set of rules, known as the conditions of fitness. The most famous of these rules is legendary among car enthusiasts, the 25-foot turning circle. The legend says this requirement existed solely so a taxi could perform a U-turn at the tiny roundabout entrance of the Savoy Hotel without reversing. Whether that specific story is true or not, the engineering challenge was very real. A standard sedan from Ford or Vauxhall simply couldn't do it. London needed a bespoke tool for the job. By the mid-1950s, the incumbent taxi was the Austin FX4. It was a tough vehicle, but it was showing its age. It sat on a pre-war chassis, had a separate chassis construction, and famously lacked a front passenger door. That space was an open platform for luggage, leaving the driver exposed to the bitter British winters. It was time for a revolution. The project was a collaboration between 3 giants. Austin provided the chassis and engine, Car Bodies of Coventry built the shell, and Mann and Overton handled the sails. The goal was to create the ultimate hackney carriage. It had to be tough enough to run 24 hours a day, spacious enough for a gentleman in a top hat, and agile enough to spin on a sixpence. When the FX4 was unveiled at the Commercial Motor Show in 1958, it looked like a spaceship compared to the old FX3. It had 4 proper doors, an enclosed luggage compartment, and a modern pontoon body style with slight tail fins that hinted at American design. But underneath that modern skin was pure industrial durability. It launched with a 2.2-litre Austin diesel engine. It wasn't designed for speed. 0 to 60 was measured in calendar days, not seconds. But it was designed for torque and longevity. It also featured independent front suspension, a luxury that finally saved the spines of the drivers who spent 12 hours a day behind the wheel. The FX4 wasn't just a car, it was the first modern mobile office. But the real magic happened inside. For the passenger, the FX4 was a TARDIS. You opened that heavy steel door, stepped up, not down, and entered a different world. The floor was completely flat. There was no transmission tunnel to climb over. And then there were the jump seats. 2 rear-facing folding seats that allowed 5 people to travel together face to face. It turned a taxi ride into a social event. And separating you from the driver was the partition, a thick glass wall. You could speak freely, and the driver would be none the wiser. However, if the back was a lounge, the front was a boiler room. We have to be honest. For the driver, the FX4 was a workplace, and a harsh one at that. The driving position was notoriously strange. The steering column came up from the floor at a steep, bus-like angle, forcing drivers to hunch over the wheel. The diesel engine sat half inside the cabin, separated only by a thin layer of metal and carpet. In the winter, your left leg would roast from the engine heat, while your right arm froze against the uninsulated door. It rattled your teeth, it vibrated your bones, and the suspension was so stiff you could feel if you ran over a coin. But despite the discomfort, the cabbies loved them. Why? Because they simply did not die. You could fix them with a hammer and a spanner. There were no ECUs to fail, no sensors to glitch. It was an honest, mechanical relationship between man and machine. But even legends bleed. As the calendar turned to the 1980s, the FX4 faced its darkest hour. The parent company, British Leyland, was collapsing under the weight of strikes, poor quality control, and financial ruin. The taxi was over 20 years old, and by modern standards, it was a dinosaur. But the real crisis wasn't the age of the chassis, it was the heart of the beast. In 1982, the tooling for the trusty old Austin 2.2-litre diesel engine was completely worn out. British Leyland needed a replacement fast, and, in a decision that would haunt the trade, they looked inside their own parts bin and chose the 2.25-litre diesel engine from the Land Rover. They rebranded the taxi as the FX4R, the R standing for Rover. On paper, it seemed like a strong British solution. In reality, it was a catastrophe. The Land Rover engine was designed for farm work and off-roading, not for idling in London traffic for 12 hours a day. It was rough, unrefined, and incredibly loud. The vibration was so severe that it would crack the chassis rails and shake the dashboard screws loose. Drivers reported going home with numb hands and ringing ears. The FX4R was slow, unreliable, and thirsty. For the first time in history, cabbies began to look elsewhere, and the reputation of the London taxi hung by a thread. The icon was dying. Recognizing the disaster, the coach builder, Car Bodies, took a massive gamble. They bought the intellectual rights to the taxi from British Leyland, becoming an independent manufacturer. They knew the chassis was still world-class, but they needed an engine that actually worked. In a move that shocked traditionalists, they looked east, to Japan. They struck a deal with Nissan to import the TD27 diesel engine. It was a revelation. It was smoother, faster, and crucially, bulletproof. They paired this new Japanese heart with a re-engineered chassis and launched the FX4 Fairway. The Fairway wasn't just a fix, it was a resurrection. It kept the classic British styling that tourists loved, but offered the reliability of a Japanese sedan. They even engineered a retrofit to make it wheelchair accessible, a massive undertaking for such an old chassis, finally acknowledging the changing needs of the public. The Fairway is widely considered the ultimate version of the FX4, the perfect marriage of British character and Japanese engineering. It didn't just save the company, it extended the life of the FX4 for another decade, proving that there was life in the old dog yet. By then, the FX4 was no longer just a car. It had become part of London itself, visual shorthand for the city. One wet street, one black silhouette, and the world knew exactly where we were. But the true cultural impact wasn't on the screen, it was on the back seat. For the passenger, the FX4 offered something that modern Uber hybrids simply cannot replicate: dignity. There was a sense of occasion when you hailed one. You didn't squeeze into it, you walked into it. It was a sanctuary of privacy. We also cannot talk about the car without talking about the person driving it. The FX4 was the vessel for the knowledge, the world's toughest taxi examination. Every driver behind the wheel of an FX4 had memorized 25,000 streets and 20,000 landmarks. There was no GPS, no sat-nav glued to the windscreen. The navigation system was the driver's brain, and the FX4 was the tool that executed that intelligence. The rattle of that diesel engine became the soundtrack of London's intelligence, and its influence spread far beyond the M25. The FX4 became a global ambassador for British identity. They were exported to the Middle East, to Japan, and even to the United States. In the 1990s, if a luxury hotel in Tokyo or New York wanted to show they had class, they didn't buy a limousine, they bought an FX4. It stood for a specific type of British resilience: stiff upper lip, unflashy and dependable. It was a car that said, keep calm and carry on. So, what finally killed the unkillable car? It wasn't a competitor, and it certainly wasn't a lack of love. The executioner was an invisible force: legislation. By the mid-1990s, the world was waking up to the dangers of air pollution, and the European Union began tightening the noose with new emission standards known as Euro 1 and Euro 2. The FX4, for all its charm, was an aerodynamic brick powered by old-school diesel technology. While the Nissan engine in the Fairway model was reliable, it was dirty. To make it compliant with the new laws would have required millions of pounds in development, electronic fuel injection, catalytic converters, and complex engine management systems. For a chassis designed in the 1950s, the math simply didn't work. The cost of keeping the old heart beating was becoming higher than the value of the patient. Meanwhile, a second legislative wave hit: the Disability Discrimination Act. The government rightly demanded that all public transport be seamlessly accessible to wheelchair users. While the Fairway had been adapted to take wheelchairs, it was technically a compromise. The new laws were stricter, and the fundamental architecture of the car was fighting against them. The chassis rails were too high, and the doors were too narrow for modern standards. It was a 1950s design trying to survive in a 1990s world, and the physics were finally fighting back. The writing was on the wall. The company, LTI, had been secretly developing a successor, the TX1, a car that looked like the FX4 but was modern underneath. And so, on the 1st of October, 1997, the machinery at the Coventry factory finally fell silent. After 39 years of continuous production, the very last Austin FX4 rolled off the line. It was the end of an era. The silhouette remained, but the soul had changed. The dinosaur had finally gone extinct.